What is a food opinion that you stand by? Except that once, my mother, myself, my daughter and my granddaughter went out for fancy afternoon tea a few years back. My granddaughter got a kid's plate since she was only 7. She got lovely food, as did we all, but the thing that made the biggest eyes pop was the open-faced Nutella sandwich with strawberries and gold flakes. Sometimes gold flakes can open a person's heart. Imagine a flower, a climbing orchid, to be exact, the one of some 20,000 varieties that produces something edible. Now imagine that its blooms must be pollinated either by hand or a small variety of Mexican bee, and that each bloom only opens for 1 day a year. Now imagine the fruit of this orchid, a pod, being picked and cured, sitting in the sun all day, sweating under blankets all night for months until, shrunken and shriveled, it develops a heady, exotic perfume and flavor. Now imagine that this fruit's name is synonymous with dull, boring, and ordinary. How vanilla got this bad rap I for one will never know. Alton Brown. It makes me so angry hearing all the stories about people who refuse to believe allergies and end up killing or almost killing their loved ones because they just had to prove them wrong. It would devastate me if I even accidentally triggered an allergic reaction in someone. This is why when I cook a meal for someone new, I always ask if they are allergic to anything first. I really tried to like coriander, cilantro and ginger, but my taste buds just don't want to agree with those two flavors. Yet most dishes my family and friends produce almost always have one or the other present. So I end up being the picky eater and I just can't convince them their meal tastes like a bar of soap for me. So they keep trying to fool me, but when something tastes like soap, it really tastes like soap. Same goes with if someone asks what ingredients are in the food. No sir, I don't want to steal your recipe, but if you are going to drown my food in sauce, please tell me what's in it. I've been diabetic for 90% of my life and have to inject insulin for carbs. All carbs. Chances are people don't know what contains carbs, so just tell me, I will probably know better. If you don't, and the sauce has more or less than you told me, I will have a very unpleasant time in the next 2 hours. In the book World War Z, which is written as a fictional account of the zombie apocalypse and its aftermath, there is a scene where a character pulls out a long list of food items, and how many different places they came from. Vanilla from Madagascar, sugar from somewhere else, caramel color from yet another place, ingredients from places all over the world. It was revealed to be the ingredients for a simple pre-war bottled cream soda, now completely impossible to source after the collapse of human society in the Z-War, and he uses it as an example of the difficulties of picking up the pieces after. It's not just the cream soda, just about everything you can fathom in this modern world, from grocery store items to medications to machinery parts, source and require materials from an intricate network of global trade and commerce. I think about that scene a lot. A grocery store is probably the most easily accessible example of this. Next time you go to the kitchen to dig out the snack, peep some of the labels and see just how many different places where your food comes from. It will leave you in awe. Even things sourced within the country would have been an unfathomable distance 100 years ago. I live in TX, and right now in this kitchen, I have California almonds and grapes, flour and coffee from Mexico, rice from Thailand, apples from Washington, etc. Shit, the olive oil in my cabinet lists multiple sources: Italy, Portugal, Greece, Morocco, Tunisia, Chile, and Argentina. Just incredible. I started eating vegetarian at the start of this year, and I found the menu options at every restaurant so limiting. When one day we decided to order Indian, I looked at the menu and was absolutely baffled by how many options I had. There were more vegetarian options than not. I've never been a big fan of Indian food because I don't like heat, but there is so much more to Indian food than heat, and I never even knew until I started trying their vegetarian options. Amazing food. When you think about it, There aren't that many cultures throughout history that have had a large chunk of their population adhere to vegetarianism for centuries on centuries. India is one of the few places where that's true. I'll die on the hill that absolutely no other cuisine authentically comes even close to the variety and quality of Indian vegetarian food. Sure, cuisines have adapted to fit vegetarianism here and there. But the reason that Indian food is unchallenged in its perfection is that you have thousands of recipes by vegetarians, for vegetarians, and gradually perfected over the course of hundreds of years. Vegetarian dishes have been cooked daily in India for the most lowly servants and dynastic emperors alike, since before your great-great-grandparents were even conceived. India has had a centuries-old head start on working on good vegetarian food. The scale of effort put into chana masala and sambar, and even a simple mixed vegetable sabzi has outlasted civilizations. As an Indian though, fuck, it's made it hard to get a decent steak anywhere, I tell you what. I remember learning in school that people set out to explore sea and land routes at great peril because of the spice trade, and I thought it sounded like the dumbest fucking thing I have ever heard. Like cinnamon and salt is not worth risking your life, you weirdos. Then I discovered and learned to appreciate Indian food. It makes total sense to me now. This is some bona fide medieval magic. Message is probably the biggest food myth that has existed. Carrots and eyesight is the only other crazy one I know of. Message naturally exists in almost all food. Message is easily added via mushrooms, onions, and tomatoes. Anything known to be savory or umami is high in message. Added message is basically a salt. A large test was done to determine if people really can have an allergy to message. People ate copious amounts of pure message. Nobody had an adverse reaction. The myth comes from an op-ed letter submitted to a scientific journal, not a study, not peer-reviewed, nothing. There are reasons to believe racism played a part in people's avoidance of Chinese restaurants and message. As restaurants began posting signs in windows that tell customers they don't add message to their food, Frito-Lay began asking tons of message to their snack foods. You ever eat Doritos? Not only does the seasoning use ingredients that are high in message, they also add the purified salt. If you tried to keep a message-free diet you would die because pretty much all food has it. Don't starve yourself. Red Delicious nearly destroyed the Washington state apple industry. The orchards bet everything on it because it was the ideal cultivar. At that time the dominant cultivars were Red and Golden Delicious, Macintosh, and Granny Smith. Once better apples like Fuji, Gala, and the like hit the market, it was too late to change course, as it takes years and years for an orchard to bear marketable fruit. The orchards got bailed out by the government, and eventually diversified their cultivars. I have issues with onions for this reason. I like when you use them to flavor food, but I don't want to eat the onion itself. It's slimy and crunchy at the same time and it gives me the heebie-jeebies. It also makes me so mad when people dice them up super small and it permeates every layer of the food. It becomes inedible for me. I wish I liked them, honestly, because the amount of grievance I receive gives me social anxiety about eating out at new places, or being invited over for dinner. Texture is oftentimes the reason I dislike a food when I try it. I like the way tomatoes and shrimp taste, but I can't eat either of those on their own because of the texture. In other foods or in small amounts, maybe, but on their own, no bueno. The only time I recall disliking a food or snack because of the taste is when I had chicken and waffles flavored Lay's. I think they were also trying to taste like syrup to fit with the waffle flavor, and all it did was make them smell bad. That smell came back as a bad aftertaste too. Toasted sesame oil, paprika, chili powder, lemon juice, message, and garlic powder all make almost everything better. You can basically haphazardly toss any combo of these into almost any dish along with salt and black pepper and it'll go from this is edible beats TV dinners, I guess. To wow, you're such a good home chef. Please share your secrets. Gluten isn't bad for you unless you genuinely can't digest it properly. Most people can digest it just fine, Diet culture has seemed to make people think it's universally unhealthy when it's not. Bread is only bad for you when it's white bread, no nutrients, and it takes the place of something nutritious in your diet. Edit: the fad has definitely helped people with celiacs, and that's great. I am thinking about the kinds of people like my mom who never expressed any kinds of stomach problems with bread, or at all, before deciding that she would never eat gluten again because it's bad. I 100% don't judge people for ordering gluten-free at restaurants because I'm just not a dick like that. So true. The texture and smell of the dry coconut flakes is terrible. Made me hate coconuts until I went on a hike in Hawaii and forgot water. Rookie mistake. But the dude on the beach was selling fresh coconut water straight off the tree. I tried it because I was feeling dehydrated and that was the most refreshing thing ever. Reset my entire view of coconuts. We usually have one person pick 3 choices and the other person choose from those 3. Really helps the indecisiveness or putting it all on one of us. Edit to add: we've also done a similar thing, but instead one person picks a couple restaurants and then you just drive, giving the other person choices at certain intersections to eliminate options and then eventually get surprised by the restaurant chosen by you. It certainly looks amazing. I just tried it for the first time this last year and I wasted my first time on a local food truck that supposedly specializes in it. The fries were soggy and tasted like cold fryer oil. I'm hoping to have a redeeming poutine experience because, as I said, it looks amazing. Edit: autocorrect didn't recognize poutine as a word. This may be blasphemy by my Canadian counterparts, but I'll tell you anyway. My husband and I have been making our own at home since COVID using Cavendish oven fries, skinny, Clubhouse powdered gravy and Squeak's cheese curds. Always turns out good, hot, gooey and crispy fries. If you have an air fryer, even better. In the US you should be able to find similar ingredients. Just layer fries with cheese curds and gravy and voila. Yes, I baked cupcakes without frosting for years and loved them as is till I posted them once and everyone kept asking for frosting. It confused me even lol. I find it stressful to have to arrange for the frosting sometimes. It's easier to bake from scratch than just slightly cook the cake and eat. Having to make the frosting, get it the right temp, cool the cake down, make sure the frosting doesn't get fucked if you're storing it. Too much hassle. Let's just treat it like sushi. Wasabi. Something similar happened to Cadbury creme eggs. When I was a kid they were so good, but now they are awful. They used to have a better quality chocolate and the inside was completely different. Plus they are definitely smaller now and I think the ratio of chocolate outside to creamy inside is different. I wish they would occasionally offer the old one as a gourmet throwback. I tried using stevia in my baking after my dad was diagnosed with diabetes, and for some friends, other family members as well. There's just no way to disguise that bitter aftertaste. I switched to monk fruit sweetener and it's been a total game changer. It can be used as a one-to-one replacement for sugar in almost any recipe, and it has no bitter aftertaste. The only thing it doesn't do well in is whipped things, like buttercream or whipped cream, since it doesn't stabilize the cream in the same way. I will live and die by the fact that McIlhenny CO. Tabasco pepper sauce, the most popular one with the green top, is criminally underrated and should be talked about with as much pedigree as the finest of French wines. For over 100 years, until demand forced outsourcing to Latin American countries, it was made from peppers exclusively grown on Avery Island, hand-picked, only when it matched the color of Le Petit Bâton Rouge, a literal small red stick whose sole purpose is to determine when these peppers are at the perfect ripeness. These peppers are then mashed and aged, fermented in the same white ash barrels this single family has been using for generations, and I mean generations, as this has been a family-run, own operation since just after the American Civil War. After fermentation the pepper solids are continually mixed with distilled white vinegar for weeks, maybe months. To form a natural emulsification, no cheating here with binders/stabilizers. 3 ingredients: Tabasco chilies, vinegar, and salt, not to mention the flavor of the wood barrels and the terror of their land and the hands of the people who uphold the sacred tradition of this fine crimson sauce. But people just think of it as that sauce found on every table at Denny's. Put some damn respect on this name. A well-done steak is only tough and dry if the person who cooked it doesn't know how to properly cook a steak to well done. You gotta go low and slow to keep it tender and juicy. You can't put it on high heat like when you're cooking to medium rare, and for the record, I prefer medium rare. I'm just tired of people acting like a beef-flavored hockey puck is the only possible result when cooking to well done. It's the texture that I don't like, or the smell makes me not like it, or the sight of it makes me not like it, or the sound of eating it makes me dislike it, are all valid opinions. Don't diss on someone because they don't like a food due to other senses beside taste. Some people may have neurological conditions that make their other senses hyper and sensitive, and some people are thrown off by certain senses sensing weird things. If you or a family member have been bashed for not eating, in my experience, beans, because of a sense other than taste, breath easy knowing you are valid. Also, if they say they associate it with something and that's why they don't like it, don't force them to eat it. To me, there are two different kinds of spice. There's the kind you find in Indian and Thai cuisine that enhances all the wonderful flavors of a dish. It makes me feel all warm inside, my nose runs, and if it's spicy enough I get a little head rush. I love that kind of spice. Then there's the kind of spice in stuff like hot Cheetos. It tastes like nothing and hurts my mouth. I don't get the popularity. I'd much rather eat a regular Cheetos. Chili extract ruins food. There is no food where it adds positively to the experience. Chili extract tastes bitter, and the burn is overpowering and much too intense for any food where there is some sort of novelty super spicy variant. The 2x spicy baldak Korean ramen comes to mind. I'd prefer to just chop up a bit too much of a nice tasting habanero or something rather than put up with burn for burn's sake. Raw vegetables are the best vegetables. I don't see why we haven't latched onto carrots as a cigar proxy. A fresh carrot, clean and straight, can serve as a stick in impersonating a conductor, lecturer or fencer. You can take a bite to punctuate a point, and it's got some kind of vitamins and stuff in there. We talk about using vegetable sticks as a replacement for cigarettes when you're trying to quit smoking, but that's half-assed. Acknowledge that holding a little stick is the main reason most people get into smoking to begin with, and now we're getting somewhere. I smoked a pipe for many years. It's bad for your lungs and it hooks you on drugs, but when I grab that bowl and point the stem at something, then motherfucker that thing is well and truly pointed at. Sell carrots based on that principle. Bugs Bunny has been doing it since before we touched the moon. Let's go. That there's no right or wrong in food. You eat what you like and I'll eat what I like. I hate it when someone shares a recipe and people start whining about how they make theirs different so it's wrong. Stop saying gross because it's a food you don't like, especially if it's in response to seeing what someone else is eating or seeing something online you haven't tried yet. How old are you for? I also hate when parents force their kids to eat something they don't like because I'm the parent. No, you're an asshole on a power trip because 99 times out of 100 they're sure as hell not going to eat it they hate. To some extent you're right about kids, but also kids will say anything to get out of eating to go back to playing. My daughter eats everything, so when she says she doesn't like it, I believe her and let her skip it. My son eats just enough not to be starving, says he's full after a couple of bites, or says he doesn't like it without even trying it, or doesn't like it even though he's eaten it before just fine. It's not simple, but it takes time to figure out. I used to get a little irked at my ex because she absolutely insisted that any guacamole we make at home be without cilantro. It isn't freaking guac without cilantro, but she was extremely adamant about it. She said it tastes like soap. I accommodated her but always thought she was just being super picky and petty, and that if she just gave it a chance she'd like it. Come to find out later that some people have a genetic mutation that makes cilantro taste like soap. We're not together anymore, but if I ever run into her again I owe her an apology about the cilantro. Kale becomes literally infinitely better when balanced for 10 seconds and ranned under cold water to remove the raw, bitter taste. It's a hearty green that really holds up under strong dressings, and is my preferred green for Caesar salads. It's also wonderful in a smoothie. My green smoothies is a 60 hours 40 minutes ratio of spinach to kale as the greenery base. Adds a lovely texture.